Good morning, everyone. I'm Willow Bay.
And I am Mike Lupica in for Bill Ritter. Welcome to Good Morning America Sunday.
Nice to have you here with us.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Coming up today, some very interesting news about aging. Now, people.
Oh, you know a lot about aging, Willow. This will be very interesting.
Hey, easy. People who are 100 and older are the fastest growing age group in the U.S. And some experts are now saying that many people may live to age 120 or beyond.
Yes.
Now, Bill Rediker has been looking into this for us, and you're going to tell us some really quite fascinating developments.
Well, the question is really, do you want to live to be 120? But we found a woman up in Needham, Massachusetts, who sort of typifies this age group, and she is fascinating, lucid, articulate, and active. And we'll talk about that a little bit
You're also,
later.
I'm sure, going to have some tips for us.
Yep.
And how we can live older and
what were those
healthier.
tips?
And
Alzheimer's.
yeah, really, exactly. We want to know them.
Now, take a look at this. Now, not every picture is what it seems, even though we've got some interesting shots of Willow's prom picture here, and you're a little fatter then, too, anyway. Lloyd, what are photomosaics?
Photomosaics is the brainchild of a guy named Rob Silvers, who took a germ, literally a germ of an idea. He saw something one day, had a little idea in the back of his head, turned it into $1 million business for himself.
The question is it sort of art or is it technology?
I think it's a little bit of both. We actually talked to him about that, and we find out what is in the pictures that make up the bigger pictures that he creates. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Also coming up, we are going to have musical superstar Roch Voisine. Now, you may not have heard of him yet, but Laurie Hibbard he's actually famous around the world, particularly in
Canada. Allow me to say
that
it's pretty big for me to be on the show with Roch Voisine. I mean, he's very, very big in Canada. He fills arenas, gold records, hit albums. He started his career much like Celine Dion did. He sang in French only, and then he had a breakthrough English album about 10 years ago, and he's been ever since.
It's funny you should mention about 10 years ago.
Ha 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 ha. I know what's coming.
Laurie.
Roch, does it bother you that you have to record in English in order to be heard by the rest of Canada?
First of all, I write in English. I used to write in English. And when I came to Quebec, I have made an album in English.
She hasn't changed a bit.
Yeah, thanks.
Little haircut.
You interviewed Roch early on in both your careers.
Both our careers. Can you believe that was 10 years ago? And it was very exciting for me to even do it back then.
And we're going to hear him perform today. He's great.
Do you think Roch's is real? Well,
we'll ask him.
Maybe you're not the right person to ask.
It's the French Roch. It's R-O-C-H. Of course it's his real name.
Okay,
no name jokes.
Okay, fine.
But first, this morning, what we will do is get you caught up on all the news. We begin this morning in Amman, Jordan, where an Iraqi diplomat has been assassinated. Jordanian officials say the diplomat and 7 others were stabbed to death, including a woman believed to be the diplomat's wife. Iraq immediately condemned the attack, which was the second on its diplomats in Jordan in the last 2 weeks. Joining us this morning from Baghdad with more on the reaction is ABC's Ron Claiborne. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Willow.
Now, I understand
the Iraqis are...
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
I understand you just got back from the foreign ministry. What did you learn there about the attack?
Well, the Iraqis are condemning this as a gross crime. They say that the victims include the number 2 man in the Iraqi embassy in Amman, his wife, and 6 others. They were apparently killed, the Iraqis are saying, at the home of a Iraqi businessman during a dinner, the post-Ramadan feast Saturday night. Scrawled in blood on the wall at that home, according to Jordanian police sources, were the words, Jordanian blood won't be wasted. But other sources are telling us, though, it appears at this point that these killings may be related to a bad business deal and not, in fact, politically motivated. Willow?
Ron, what are relationships like? It was the relationship like at this point between Iraq and Jordan. How tense are things?
Well, officially they are cordial and brotherly, but there has been quite a bit of tension in the last 4 or 5 weeks, primarily because the Iraqis executed 4 Jordanian citizens that they had accused of smuggling car parts here in Baghdad. King Hussein of Jordan had asked the Iraqis not to hang those men. The Iraqis went ahead and did it. That has been a source of considerable tension in the last month or so.
All right, thank you, Ron, very much. That was Ron Claiborne reporting live from Baghdad this morning. Mike?
In Washington, the case of Jones versus Clinton made history yesterday as Bill Clinton became the first U.S. president to testify as a defendant in any civil or criminal suit. Paula Jones met the president yesterday in his lawyer's office where he gave a deposition in her sexual harassment suit against him. Here's ABC's Jackie Judd.
Determined to avoid reporters on this day that the White House had fought very hard to put off, President Clinton arrived at his lawyer's offices in a motorcade and went into an underground garage. Paula Jones arrived in a taxi cab.
Come on, you guys. Hey, come on. Hey. Please.
Made her way through mobs of reporters and was said by her spokeswoman to be ready to look Mr. Clinton right in the eye.
She's very up. She's not nervous. She said a prayer.
The deposition took place amid great secrecy in an 11th floor conference room. The president was, of course, expected to deny that he made sexual advances toward Jones in this Little Rock hotel 7 years ago when he was the governor of Arkansas. Some reports suggested Mr. Clinton might concede he could have met Jones there, but without any such recollection. Jones's legal team went in wanting to establish a pattern of sexual misbehavior, and so was expected to question Mr. Clinton about other allegations of infidelity. In the late afternoon, 6 hours after it had begun, this extraordinary event was over. Mr. Clinton returned to the White House, ending what had to be one of the most difficult days of his presidency. Jackie Judd, ABC News, Washington.
How did it go?
Joining us now with more on this case and a number of other legal stories in the news this week is ABC's Terry Moran. Good morning, Terry.
Hi, Will.
So what happens now as a result of yesterday's deposition?
Well, this is kind of the Rubicon for the president. He is now under oath answering not just questions about Paula Jones's accusations, but about all those stories which have surfaced over the years that her lawyers wanted to grill him about.
And the gossip is flying this morning, publicly, obviously.
Right. There's apparently, as Jackie Judd reported earlier this week, another woman who, under oath, has accused the president of harassing her on the job in the White House. So this may change the case altogether. His lawyers are saying, from now on, no deal, we go to trial and beat her.
This certainly changes history altogether. How vulnerable, first of all, is that deposition? I mean, it's supposed to be sealed, but...
It's going to leak. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Somebody is going to leak that videotape of the president answering these questions at some point.
He must have felt yesterday like somebody getting walked to the chair, having to walk into that office and answer these questions. At the end of the day, what is Paula Corbin Jones after here? I mean, it's, some people have gone as far as to call it a shakedown. But this has got to be more about money at this point. I mean, what's she looking for at the end?
If you asked her, she'd say what every plaintiff in every civil lawsuit in America says. She'd say justice. What does that mean? I think that's changed. Originally, I think that this was a young woman who was generally shocked at what was being said about her. She wanted her good name back, but now it may be about cash.
Quickly give us a preview of a case that's about to unfold. Oprah Winfrey versus the cattle ranchers and this very new type of law that they're calling, veggie libel laws?
Absolutely. This is a test of a new kind of libel law. She had a show in which she disparaged meat, according to the cattlemen, in which she herself said, I'm never going to eat another hamburger again, and she got sued. And what this is the question is this law constitutional? Can you say something which in good faith you may believe to be true and still get sued for libel?
Isn't it interesting that Oprah can afford a lawsuit better than the President of the United States can?
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. All right, Terry, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks.
When we come back, there's a new monument in Havana, Cuba this weekend. The Diana Garden was inaugurated yesterday as a memorial to the late Princess of Wales. At a ceremony, communist officials praised Diana's work with landmine victims and explained that the obelisk and small island represent her burial site. The British ambassador said the garden would be an eternal sanctuary for Britons. And preparations are still underway in Havana for this week's visit by Pope John Paul II. The Pope is scheduled to arrive on Wednesday. ABC News will cover the papal visit all week, and Good Morning America's coverage begins tomorrow morning live from Havana.
That's the news for this morning. But up next, the very old are getting younger all the time. How more Americans are living longer and healthier lives. Stay with us.
In the Sunday forecast, low pressure will bring snow to the central Great Lakes and into the Northeast. Snow is also possible in the northern Rockies and from southern Illinois to northern West Virginia. Skies will be mostly clear from the Four Corner region to Texas and partly cloudy across the northern plains. Temperatures today will be seasonable with highs in the teens to 20s in the northern plains. From the Great Lakes to the Northeast, highs will be in the 20s, and across the Pacific Northwest, highs will range from the 30s to the 50s. For more on your local weather forecast, check out abcnews.com on the World Wide Web or on America Online. GMA Sunday continues after this.
Good Morning America Sunday's weather report is brought to you by Ethan Allen.
I'm very proud to have been part of the beginnings of America's space program. And needless to say, I'm excited to be back, and I'm honored, I'm privileged, but more than that, it's not important how I feel standing here. The important thing is the opportunity that this gives to take us in some new directions.
Well, that was John Glenn this week announcing that he will return to space later this year at age 77. He says he still has the right stuff to go into orbit as the oldest astronaut ever. His mission this time to provide valuable research into the effects of aging. But as ABC's Bill Redeker learned, Glenn is just one of thousands of Americans for whom getting older definitely doesn't mean slowing down.
Yeah, you know, demographers look at it this way, those who look at the statistical breakdown of our society, that years ago, and only until recently, you could create a triangle with the number of folks who were being born at the bottom and the number of folks who were getting older at the top, a triangle or a pyramid. Now, with that explosion of people in older age, the triangle has gone like this. It's straightened out. It's become more of a square. There are more people on top, as many, perhaps, and even in some cases more so, than at the bottom. Now, we found a woman in Needham, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston, who remembers the sinking of the Titanic. She remembers World War I, although they called it the Great War back then, but that's not all that she remembers.
I was very irritated. They made me stand on a stool to be tall enough. That's my sentimental end of boarding school picture, 1917.
Ruth Hogue has a lifetime of memories.
And this one was taken the day of our wedding.
Gathered from a very long, very full life. Ruth Hogue is 100 years old.
I was 11, I think.
So this picture is about 89 or 90 years old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ruth is a member of the fastest growing age group in America, people who have survived a century or more. Today, there are more than 50,000 centenarians in the United States. In 40 years, that number is expected to reach 500,000. And as more and more of us reach that ripe old age, research into the aging process is racing to keep pace.
Well, the field of aging research has really boomed, especially in the last 5 years. For the first time, scientists and the general public are seeing just how long we can live.
Not only how long, but also how well.
People used to think that the older you are, the sicker you had to be. And in fact, we're seeing the opposite with our centenarian subjects, that all of them had to be extremely healthy to get to their age in the first place.
What's the secret to living a long life?
Well, of course, I always say first, your genes. My mother lived to be over 100. I have a sister who's 103.
In research centers like this one at Boston's Massachusetts General Hospital, scientists are discovering the secrets to living a long life. They're finding that longevity depends as much on lifestyle as it does on genetics, and that those who live to be 100 or more led active lives both physically and mentally.
Genetics accounts for no more than 1/3 of the determination of our lifespan. But as it turns out, 65% of our lifespan is determined by choice of lifestyle.
I'm 91 and I feel great. I exercise moderately and don't overeat and don't worry too much.
That approach seems to be universal among those who live to be 100. Dr. Thomas Pearls, who heads up the New England Centenarian Study, has found some interesting similarities among his 100-year-old subjects.
They do things always in moderation. You don't see them doing extremes, for instance. They tend to have quite an optimistic view about life. They certainly don't smoke. You don't see any obese centenarians.
If we can knock out, prevent or reverse the major age-related disorders, for example, cancer or Alzheimer's disease or cardiovascular disease, which I think is a reality in the coming millennium. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of next century, the average lifespan is 120 or even 150 years old.
But will we want to live that long?
There are very pleasant parts of it. Much of that, it's just wonderful having a family and seeing these little great-grandchildren growing up is really a great thing. Somewhere around here.
Wow, now that's so interesting. 65% of your lifespan sort of depends on lifestyle and choices. And besides what the folks in your piece say, not eating too much, being moderate exercise.
Sure.
Are there other things that we know about that we should be doing to be living longer?
These researchers believe that up to the age of 80, genes will get you there. Beyond that, it's lifestyle. And specifically, they point to the use of vitamin E. They advise older people to take vitamin E because it slows the advent of Alzheimer's disease.
How does it do that? Do we know?
Well, it has to do with chemical imbalances and studies of the brain. But a lot of folks contract Alzheimer's when they get older. About 2/3 of older Americans. And the second thing they want people to do if they want to live a long life is to become mentally engaged, stretch your mind, learn something new, study something, become involved, and that actually has a physiological effect as well.
And now, we've seen just this flurry of research really in the past 2 weeks about sort of cellular level aging.
Right.
How soon before we see practical results of that stuff?
The folks up in Boston believe within 10 years there will be all sorts of significant breakthroughs in anti-aging drugs, devices that we can take, or prescriptions rather, that we can consume that will extend our lives if we want to live that long.
Oh, good.
So there's still hope for us.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Coming up next, from a New Jersey yard sale to fame and fortune, one woman's story that may inspire you to check out today's yard sales. We'll be back.
Good Morning America Sunday is brought to you by Office Depot.
When Claire Beckman paid $25 for this table at a yard sale more than 30 years ago, she thought she might have overpaid. But the table turned out to be a treasure. It goes on the auction block today at Sotheby's. And Claire Beckman joins us this morning along with Les Kino, Director of the American Furniture Department at Sotheby's. Welcome, both of you. This is going to come as a surprise to both of you, but antiquing is not exactly a passion of mine. And if I see a garage sale sign, I'll go miles out of my way to avoid driving my wife by. But you have always had this passion yourself. Mm-hmm. And 30 years ago, you go looking one day, and what?
And we had bought a new home, didn't have any money or furniture decent. So I wanted to find something rather classy, and I noticed this table out in the yard. And I thought, well, okay. And she says to me, it's $30. I said, oh my goodness, I only have 25, and I don't even have it with me. But she said, you can have it for 25. And I thought that was really nice. So I came back the next day. It was still there the next day.
And your family is torqued off because you're always bringing stuff home. And they said,
Please,
and they said,
yeah.
Claire, really, the first step is admitting you have a problem with cheesy stuff.
They're still saying it. Anyway, cheesy stuff is right. This was a mess. It was a total mess. It was black. It was covered with 200 years of dirt, which I didn't know how many years so far. And I left it on her porch for the weekend because I didn't want my family to see it in that state.
And then you turned it over.
And then when I got home, turned it over, and I see John Seymour. And I thought, oh, that's nice. I wonder who he is. I had no idea what a label meant then.
Now,
but
Les.
Hepplewhite legs and spade feet, I knew.
All right, now, Les, 30 years later, that $25 investment could go for what today?
Well, since a piece of label, John and Thomas Seymour, has never actually come to auction, we feel that the estimate we have on the table of $200,000 to $300,000
$300,000.
Yeah, it might be actually very conservative. We've had a lot of interest in the table.
Okay, because to me, this looks like, well, a coffee table. Why is this worth all this money?
Well, it's actually one of the great masterpieces by John and Thomas Seymour. It's made about 1798 in Boston, Massachusetts. And it has Thomas and John Seymour's signature satinwood inlaid husks draped across the frieze, tied with bow knots.
Go ahead, you can show it to us.
It also has, there's a right here, these husks that are draped with Cupid's bow knots. And it has wonderful quality, it's great quality figured mahogany, and it also has its original finish.
Well, you know, I started to put my coffee cup on it, and you got me in a death grip. Now, here's what I want to know. How come? Now, you know you don't know how much it's worth over the years, but you know that it's like having a lottery ticket sitting around the house. Why did this sit in your house for 30 years?
Well, first of all, I loved it. I liked the whole idea of it. Second of all, I went into the library and I researched John Seymour, and he was big. I had the volume of, what was his name?
Vernon Stoneman.
Vernon Stoneman's volume of his collection. And I thought, oh, I see some tables like mine. I guess I'll keep it.
And now you just decided that this was the time. How often does something like this happen? I mean, that someone would get this kind of return on an investment like this?
Not very often, actually. It's really very rare to see something like this found at a yard sale. But it's great when it happens to a nice lady like Claire.
Now, I mean, you're saying $300,000, but somebody could come in and just, you know, I don't mean to be disrespectful, blow the doors off of Sotheby's today, and it could go for more than that.
We hope so. We hope so.
We're hoping.
There's been lots of interest in the table. Yeah.
Real quick.
Yes.
Do you now, when you're out shopping, do you go looking for values, or you just stuff you love?
I don't have much room left, so I'm trying to keep it down.
Congratulations. I hope you make a big score. Already, he's rocking Europe and Canada. Now, Roch Voisine makes his national debut in America when GMA Sunday returns.
Roch Voisine has sold more than 6 million albums, starred in several TV shows, and his wax figure stands next to Madonna's at Musée Grévin in Paris. Now, while we may not know much about him in America, in Canada and Europe, he cannot walk down the street without being mobbed by fans. Roch Voisine performs to sell-out crowds around the world. His television concert at the Eiffel Tower attracted a record-breaking 14 million viewers. To his fans, it makes little difference whether he's singing in French or in English. It's the voice they come to hear. Roch's latest album, Kissing Rain, shipped platinum and has already scored 4 top singles on the Canadian music charts. And making his national network debut here on GMA Sunday, Roch Voisine joins us now, fresh from his Canadian tour, where you were mobbed like that every step of the way, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's sort of part of the show, isn't it?
Now, you started, obviously, singing in French.
And actually, the weird thing is, I'm from French Canada, but every piece of music I had written at that time was in English. And I didn't want to sing in French. And they convinced me in Quebec, and they said, come on, you know, maybe here you should start by singing in French. So I said, okay, I'll try. And it worked out pretty good, because it really started my whole career there. And then I moved back to English a few years later.
And that really held you back, we know.
No, not really. No, it didn't actually. It was fun. It was fun. It's actually very nice to be able to go from one to the other. Yeah.
And you're going to be singing a little bit later for us from your new album?
Yes, it's called Kissing Rain album, and a song called Love Never Dies.
Wonderful. We are looking forward to it.
Thank you.
And GMA Sunday will be back right after this. Good. I can't wait to hear you sing after all this. Coming up in this half hour, some people create pictures with paint or with charcoal. Now, we're going to introduce you to a man named Rob Silvers. He uses, other people's pictures, right?
Yeah, he punches out a bunch of stuff on a computer, and it ends up looking, you know, like Abraham Lincoln's face. I don't know how he does it, because it's a mojo deal on the computer. It happens, and it works.
There you go. We're going to tell you all about it. coming up. But right now, some news headlines.
The top story this morning is the assassination of an Iraqi diplomat in Jordan. Iraq has already sent officials to Amman to assist in the investigation. This comes as tensions between Iraq and the West continue to grow. The Defense Ministry in Baghdad this morning ordered all Iraqi adults, men and women, to report for military training next month. And the British aircraft carrier HMS Invincible is headed for the Persian Gulf to back up UN demands that weapons inspectors be allowed to continue their search for chemical and biological weapons.
Well, joining us now from Washington, as she does each week, is Cokie Roberts, who will be joined later on by Bill Richardson, U.S. Ambassador to the UN. Good morning, Cokie.
Good morning, William.
So, Cokie, more tensions this morning, demands from Iraq that the U.S. end the weapons, end the weapons inspections if they don't remove sanctions. Where are we now at this point?
Here, well, we seem to be back at the beginning. 7 years ago, the war ended, and 120 days later, all of the weapons of mass destruction were supposed to be out of there. Well, here we are, 7 years later, and Bill Richardson, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, said this week, patience is wearing thin. Bill Cohen, the Secretary of Defense, said patience is a virtue that is not endless, but we seem to have been very patient. And the question is, when does the patience run out, and what does the United States do about it?
Now, Cokie, at this point, is there any more solidarity at the UN?
Well, not so as you'd notice. There's not, the Brits are with us, and that's about it. But I think that any time that Saddam Hussein does a huge amount of nose thumbing, that the UN sort of gets together temporarily and says, bad boy. But that's the extent of it so far. And as I say, the question for Ambassador Richardson is, at what point do you say enough and do something beyond that?
Cokie, also coming up today, I know that you're going to be interviewing Senator John Glenn, who just completed one of the most successful lobbying efforts we've seen on Capitol Hill in a while, right?
John Glenn going back to space. He'll be age 77 at the time, 36 years after he last went into space. And yes, he apparently spent 2 years just bugging NASA, the space agency, saying, I want to go, I want to go. And they have been studying him for 42 years. They know more about John Glenn's body than most people do about their own. And he is interested in this whole question of aging. And apparently space, going into space has certain aging qualities attached to it. And so the question is how they can translate that to studying aging on Earth. I just think it's wildly exciting. And this will be his first live interview since he made that announcement. And he's just he is like a little kid about it. It's fun to just talk to him.
As sort of in a way we all are. I mean, Mike and I were talking yesterday about, memories of 1961.
I remember my dad, who flew in the Army Air Force, telling me why that was a big deal and why John Glenn was the biggest hero in the country. This guy is going into space. He's 3 years older than my father, who usually only goes to the first tee with me. So it's a fantastic thing.
All right, well, Cokie, obviously we will be watching later on.
And we'll also have Paula Jones as lead attorney. So lots to watch for this morning.
All right, Cokie, thank you as always.
Good to be with you.
When GMA Sunday continues making pictures out of pictures, when a computer puts thousands of tiny images together, do they add up to art? "29-year-old Rob Silvers is living what many grad students can only dream of. He turned his master's thesis at MIT into a company that last year, its first year, earned close to $1 million. Laurie Hibbard caught up with him this week, and this guy, is this one of those deals where if you put enough guys in front of enough computers, they'll figure out a way to make dough?
No, it's not at all. No, it's not the monkey theory, Michael. No, at all. This guy spent a couple of years doing this, and he really is living the dream. It's funny that you should say that. He counts Al Gore, Bill Gates, and George Lucas among his clients, and they are all big fans of his as well. Now, what he does is he recreates well-known images using a technique he invented that combines two of his biggest passions, computers and photography. From a distance, Rob Silver's creations look like standard copies of famous images. But on closer inspection, a unique world of pictures made from pictures comes into focus.
What first inspired you?
I saw a portrait of a man made out of seashells where an artist and scientist took seashells and glued them onto a wooden board. From a distance, you would see a portrait of a man, but if you came up close, you could no longer see the face. All you could see were individual seashells. And being a photographer, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to make this from photographs?
That idea became his master's thesis at MIT, and he spent the next 2 years sitting at a computer writing the program for photomosaics.
I wasn't thinking at first about making money from it.
But he has. He and his work have been featured in some of the country's leading publications.
I did the cover for Life magazine for the 60th anniversary issue, and that was actually enough money to start my entire company when I graduated.
Silvers uses a complex software program to create his photomosaics. His computer chooses from thousands of photographs that he's scanned into its memory. It then matches the color, shape, and light of the individual photographs to the larger image he's creating. But the work doesn't stop there. It involves long hours of fine-tuning.
Let me ask you this. If you and I put the same photographs into the computer, would we come out with the same image? I mean, what makes it unique to you?
There's many ways that I can tune the photomosaic so that it comes out the way that I want to do it. I know what the computer will do with various inputs, and I spend many days or weeks perfecting it, and I'll try making maybe 30 different versions of the mosaic.
For months, Silvers has been working with photos of the environment to perfect a portrait of Vice President Al Gore. It's a painstaking process of changing one tile at a time. Despite all his hard work, I still found a couple of flaws.
Okay, you know what's bugging me is Al Gore's right eye. It's so bright, it's so white. Is there anything we can do to change that?
And we can stop on one that you like better.
No.
Wait. Yeah. Oh, that one. That looks pretty good.
That's not bad.
Okay. We'll leave that.
Okay.
Move on to the next problem.
Do you ever put a hidden image in any of your work?
I don't do it in every image, but there is a hidden image in the Darth Vader piece, and there is a hidden image in the Yoda piece, and there is a hidden image in the Abraham Lincoln one.
And when you say hidden, you mean?
Well, it's a special photograph that has significance that I purposely put in, and I'm hoping that people will discover it.
But his critics aren't interested in hidden images. They're busy questioning whether this is art or just a technological gimmick.
I think right now I'm a craftsman and I'm learning the tools. I created the software, I'm creating sketches with it, and I'm learning what it can do. And then over time, I'm going to focus more on creating images that have great meaning to me. And I think those will be art.
Perhaps one of Silver's most personal and moving works is art. He's a photographer and has created a mosaic version of one of his own photos using panels from the AIDS Memorial quilt.
I made this image for myself. It's very serious for me. I took the photograph myself and I thought a lot about it, and I really wanted to make something that people would feel an emotional reaction to. This is one of my most special images.
Now, we were talking about this guy before this show. I said, as a parent, this looked like a glorified version of Where's Waldo. But you spoke,
and I slapped you down on that one. I was torqued off that you said that, as a matter of fact.
You spoke harshly to me and said, no, that there's more going on here than that.
Well, the thing is, he doesn't put a hidden image in every mosaic that he does, only in certain ones. Now, the Abraham Lincoln, he's very, very secretive about what the image is and where he puts it, so I can't really reveal too much, but he did say that I could say that in the Abraham Lincoln one, there is a small picture of John Wilkes Booth. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but, you know, and he put his girlfriend in one once. I mean, he does some pretty interesting things.
So there is a Where's Waldo quality to this.
But if you want to look at it that way, that makes you happy, Mike.
But he also does not think of himself as doing high art here.
Not at all. He's very realistic about the fact that it's a meld of computer. There is some creativity involved, though, especially when he uses, this is his own photograph.
This is really...
And actually a beautiful idea to use the AIDS Memorial quilt panels. And we put this in here because you really need to get perspective on these pictures. When you look at it from far away, you can really see what it is, but as you go closer, it just looks like a bunch of color, and you really don't get the full impact of what it is. Interestingly enough, Al Gore has not seen the finished product of his. So if he's watching today, Mr. Gore, that's your finished product, so just in case.
He probably thinks it could have been used as a backdrop for Love Story, where he and Tipper were, Oliver and Jennifer. Up next, the music of Roch Voisine. You know, he's the king of rock and roll in Canada.
He's
Did you know
huge.
that? He's big.
Huge.
He's very big. I still don't believe it's his real name. GMA Sunday continues after this.
You're a cynical man.
I know what you're thinking. The wrong person is in heels here. He wanted to be a hockey star, but ended up a rock and roll star. Earlier, we introduced you to Roch Voisine, and in just a few minutes, he's going to perform for the first time nationally in the United States. You were a hockey player. Now,
I played college, yes.
It said that you were a semi-pro player. Now, I had assumed, being from this country, that everybo's a semi-pro player.
No,
you had a real, serious hockey career.
I was playing hockey. I was drafted by the junior A team in Quebec City years ago. And way before that interview that you saw at the beginning of the show, way before that. And I also played college hockey for 4 years.
And apparently no major structural damage.
Exactly. No, well, you know, I've got a few
Clearly
stitches,
not.
but I hide them very well.
Settled.
Yeah, absolutely, I hide them very well.
Do you still play?
Yes. I play with friends, especially last winter. I got back to Montreal because I was in LA for 2 years, and LA has a bit of ice hockey, not that much. I was in Montreal for the past 6 months, so I got a chance to play hockey with my friends. It's really fun. I love it.
You get your little skating fix in between.
Yeah, it is absolutely a fix. You play hockey for 30 years, and when you play, you have a chance to play once in a while. It is considered a fix.
Tell us a little bit about what you're going to sing for us.
It's a song off the Kissing Rain album. It's called Love Never Dies. And
they tell me it's a lush ballad.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, no, it's definitely not a rock and roll song. It's probably better for a morning show.
Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Take it away.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Won't you tell me where we go from here? So many thoughts, but none of them are clear. We've always been each other's main support. Was I to blame when you walked out the door? You really never had much time to talk. Sip your morning coffee, then you walk. Guess you didn't like the family blame. What part of love did you not understand? 'Cause love never dies. Not in my eyes.
Get a chair over here.
It's 9 o'clock at night, you know.
Just a little chaos and bedlam out here, getting all you guys in your seats properly. Before we get started chatting, just a couple of program notes before we go. First of all, we should thank Chubb's Antiques Roadshow, who brought us that great story about that table, which shortly we think will be earning big bucks.
I actually thought that show was called This Old Coffee Table.
No, I can't. Also, later on this morning on This Week with Sam and Cokie, John Glenn gives his first live interview since announcing he will return to space this year. And tonight on World News Sunday, an unorthodox campaign to attract badly needed new priests to Catholic Church.
And here is Charlie Gibson with a preview of Good Morning America.
This week on Good Morning America, Kevin Newman will be live in Cuba, and we'll take an extraordinary look inside the people, the way of life, as the country prepares for the Pope's historic visit. Live from Cuba all this week on Good Morning America.
I am fascinated by the fact that you head up our legal unit here. You're in charge of this beat. This week, 4 stories in the headlines. How do you stay on top of them all, and sort of what's next for tomorrow morning?
The short answer is I don't. I stay on top of the stories which I'm assigned to. But I think the reason is, we live in a time when everything gets tossed into the courts. If we have a problem, we throw it in the courts, and that's really why it's a very lively beat.
There was a feeling that after OJ, okay, we'd seen the one great trial, and all you guys would end up working out of a little storefront, and every 6 months you'd get work. And now, if this Clinton, Corbin Jones thing goes to trial, it will be a circus of the first rank.
It will. There'll be no camera in there, which may be a blessing for the country, but it will be a circus.
And yesterday, in fact, it was a circus. Wasn't there a problem earlier in the morning when Paula Jones tried to get Bill? You're nodding.
Yeah. Well, she couldn't get through the cameras, could she?
She was almost injured.
And there were insightful questions like, did you change your hairdresser?
And what did you have for breakfast this morning and things like that?
Bill, after your piece about people living to be 100, I was thinking by the end of yesterday, Clinton felt like he was 100 years old after sitting in that room for about 6 hours answering the questions that we can only assume he answered.
There's been a run on vitamin E at the White House.
Yeah, but for good reason, obviously.
Can't remember back then. What happened? I don't know.
Well, what we can remember is that we loved your music.
Oh, thank you very much.
So we've just got a little bit of time left.
Thank you very much for having me here. And I'd like to
thank
Ray Bruni for getting me on this show this morning. Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, since we're thanking people, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mike Lupica, for filling in for Bill Ritter today.
Well, thank you for having me. I told you I couldn't possibly sink your career in just an hour. So I think this went relatively
well. Say goodbye.
Say
goodbye. See you next week, everybody. Go ahead, sing.
Oh, sure.
Hit it. Roch Voisine singing Hélène.
In French, why not?
Okay.
Seul sur le sable, les yeux dans l'eau, mon rêve était trop beau. Dès qu'il s'achève, tu partiras à 100 000 lieues de moi. Comment oublier ton sourire, tellement de souvenirs. Helen, things you do, little English in there, make me crazy about.
Good Morning America Sunday has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source. ABC News, now always on.